What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another week. It's Live Life Progressive Show. Sincere Hogan, that's me. Got Mike Mahler on the other line from sunny Las Vegas. I always feel like I'm introducing some chorus line or something like that when I say sunny Las Vegas.
Yeah, one day it'll be torrential rain out here.
He's like, you're lying, Sincere. Try again.
Yeah, man, we have an awesome guest today. I can't wait to talk to this guy. In fact, he's actually one of the first guys I interviewed when I first got into the business. One of my strategies to really get my name out there was just to contact people I admire, like Steve Maxwell and our guest today, and Charles Poliquin. And this was not only a way to help them get their name out there and deliver some great content, but also to help me network with some of these people. So for those of you out there that are new to any business and you're looking for effective networking means, avoid nuisance networking. That's when you're bothering people. That's when you're just hitting people up on the street and going, oh, can I pick your brain for a minute? Or you're emailing someone saying, hey, can I get you on the phone for a while? I have some questions. I was like, yeah, I'm sure you do. But people are busy. All right? You have to look into what's in it for them. Lead into what's in it for them as opposed to what's in it for you, because busy people don't want to deal with that. But anyway, before we get to him, remind everyone that you can use that coupon code LLA to get 10% off the best nutrition supplements around. My Adrenal Energy Supplement Red continues to sell really well, getting some incredible testimonials for that. The Aggressive Strength Testosterone Booster is on back order. It's completely sold out. It will be back in stock on May 16th. I had a huge plug from Charles Poliquin last week, and that just
wiped you out.
Yeah, exactly. I had enough inventory to get me through the next 2 weeks, I thought, and then he put that plug out, and over the weekend it just sold out.
That happened the last time he did it to you, man.
Yeah, exactly. He's kind of like the Oprah effect in our business. The Charles Poliquin effect. He plugs something and forget it. Whatever you have is going to sell out. You could have 1,000 left of your book, and it's going to be gone by the time he gets that out there. Also, he's one of the few people that responded immediately to help Warrior Angels out. I actually reached out to a bunch of people we know in the fitness business and asked them to plug Warrior Angels, share the episode we did with Andrew. Yeah. And no one got back to me except for Charles, and he got back to me within probably 2 hours. His assistant got back to me, and then the next day they put the episode up on their Facebook page, which has over 200,000 views. Yeah, so that was really cool. He's a guy who a lot of people say he's very, not condescending, but just intimidating and harsh on people, but the reality is he's a guy who gets stuff done.
Right.
You ask him to do something, he's going to do it. He wants to help a cause that you're interested in, and he's interested in, he's going to get it out there.
Well, most of the people probably saying that are those people we talk about who are like nuisance networkers. They're all about, trying to put him on to do something to make them look good, but they don't actually have anything to offer for him. And that's probably the reason why they say that. That's usually when people start hating like that. It's kind of like, oh, they may have sent him an email and there was nothing that was really worthwhile. And then he didn't reply back or whatever else. And they're like, oh, you know what? I can't stand that guy.
Right. Right.
So, and that's usually what people do. It's just like, dude, maybe it was your approach. Maybe it was you. Okay. Maybe you're the problem. So.
Yeah. So anyway, we'll do shout outs and all that jazz later on. So I want to talk to our guest today, and I don't want to keep him hanging forever. So today we have the first UFC middleweight champion ever, 5-time defending champion, left the UFC undefeated, and that's Frank Shamrock. And many people look at him as the prototype for MMA, meaning he was the first guy to take all these divergent tools and put them together. He was really good on the ground. He was good wrestler, good striking. And he was kind of the prototype for what we saw with people like Georges St. Pierre and so forth that we see today.
Yeah.
So, Frank, how you doing, man?
I'm doing fantastic, guys.
I was just telling my co-host Sincere that the first time I ever interviewed you was 2002, and it was for T-Nation magazine. And then I interviewed you again a year later, and that went into the defunct MMA magazine. I think it was called Fight Life or something along those lines. But that's 14 years ago. Wow. It was crazy. And I think it was right before you made your comeback. You did a comeback in Elite XE. Yeah, it was Elite XE and then Strikeforce. And then I think you might have fought in Japan one time before all of that as well.
Yeah, that's 2002 I launched actually 2003 I launched the WEC on pay-per-view.
That's right.
And a light heavyweight match, which was actually
I was there. Yeah, you invited me. I came out there with the press pass. That was great. I remember I went to your after party and Bill Goldberg was there and Jeff Blatnick was there. Really nice guy. And that was fun because you were telling everyone about it. You're like, man, I got hit in the head. I almost got knocked out.
Yeah. He surprised me. I didn't think because I was believing my own invincibility by then. I mean, it'd been 10 years I was undefeated, and
I'd actually sold the pay-per-view and was the executive producer on that show.
Right.
So, I mean, I had like 9,000 hats on. I was the brand spokesman. I was like, I figured out that, you know, if you just hustle it, you can, you know, help grow the industry. So I was wearing every hat, and I had no idea he was going to sock me that hard. It was, but yeah, I mean, it worked in my favor. But yeah, for about 2 seconds, I was like, holy, he just cracked me.
That was a hard hit. I was there ringside, and people don't realize that when you're watching it at home and you see someone get hit, that's a much different experience than when you're there live, and especially really close to the cage.
Yeah, and it was a tiny cage. And
yeah.
He was 225, maybe 227. Nervous, twitchy, solid muscle, and he got scared and hit me, and yeah, he rocked me, knocked me all the way across the chest.
And then you submitted him a few seconds later, I believe. And then what's funny is you're walking around the ring celebrating, and Tito was there. Tito Ortiz was one row in front of me. And then you just pointed him out, and I could just tell from the back of his head that he was pissed off. You know? Yeah. I didn't even see his face. I could just tell by the back of his head.
Yeah.
You pointed at him like, hey, I already beat you once. You know, or something like that, some kind of exchange like that.
Yeah. I was at a unique position where the sport was still developing, and so was television network, television distribution. So yeah, I was like, all right, if I can get Tito on the board, you know, I could sell this fight. And I just went crazy as a businessman because it was a very underdeveloped industry. There was so much opportunity besides the fighting, and I knew the fighting was limited because of my physical body. And I mean, I came with a jacked up body. I've had a bad back since I was 16. So, you know, my career was always, you know, one spinal fusion away from not having a career. So I just had to maximize it.
Yeah, now that you said that was the first WEC event, or was it was the first one?
That was the first one on pay-per-view.
Okay, on pay-per-view.
He came to me actually to fight Ricardo Almeida and at the Mohegan Sun.
Right.
And I actually broke my leg in sparring against Crazy Bob. I kicked his elbow, shattered my leg. Didn't know it. Trained for a week on. I'm looking at the manual right now that I actually wrote all the notes in. And I broke my leg after about a week of training. And I had to pull out of the fight. But I owed him the money, and I'm a man of words. So we threw this other show, which I was able to sell on pay-per-view. And, you know, my value in Hollywood was growing, and I was able to take their brand to the next level on a easier fight, but a bigger show.
Right.
So it all worked out, and, you know, I was able to pay my debt to them. So it gave me a healthy advance, you know.
Right, because you were on Oz at that time, as you had kind of a guest reoccurring role, the TV show Oz on HBO, and then you were on Texas Walker Ranger before that.
Yeah, slowly creeping my way into Hollywood, and I did the No Rules movie right around that time.
Yeah, that's right.
I kept, you know, my goal was to get out of this very, you know, violent sport and try to, you know, move into entertainment, utilize my other skill sets.
Yeah, that's one thing that I always found interesting about you is that you said that you're not comfortable with violence and you didn't like the idea of hurting your opponent. That was something that was in your mind. Because a lot of people think as fighters as someone who can't wait to get in that cage and just destroy their opponent. But that was kind of a mental battle that was constantly on your mind.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, think about it. And plus, I came from a home of abuse, and I grew up as a child of abuse, you know, where you know, physical abuse is happening and you don't know the boundaries.
Yeah.
So then to become a fighter and have all of this power and skill, you know, it was very confusing. It was very challenging for me as a human being, as a spiritual human being. And I took, you know, it took a big fight of me just getting the hell beat out of me, you know, to realize, well, this is insane. Why am I holding on to this, you know, fear from my childhood and conditioning that's nothing to do with me being a world champion. And I was able to switch that up, but it took John Lover beating on me for 20 minutes.
Right, I remember that fight.
It took 20 minutes.
That was super brawl, right? That was a super brawl
in Hawaii.
Yeah, you told me that you weighed 205 for that fight, and you said a good chunk of it was beer.
Beer and oatmeal.
But you were still pretty shredded, man. So I think a lot of people would love to get on the beer diet if they were going to look like you did in that fight.
This was the one training program that I did the beer and oatmeal. It was a complete failure. I got tired in a minute and a half. I looked amazing. I looked like I was a rock star.
Yeah. Are you just genetically gifted with your physique? Because it seems like you're one of those guys who can be pretty lax with his diet and you're still going to be pretty ripped and have abs.
Yeah. And I also eat good all the time.
Right. And
I'm always hungry. Like mine's a machine. I'm always hungry. I'm always ripped as long as I don't drink beer. But when I made beer and oatmeal and weightlifting with lots of sleeping, I was like just huge and puffy. I looked gorgeous.
Straight farm boy diet right there, man.
Yeah, exhausted, just done. And he beat the hell out of me. But it changed how I looked at myself in the sport and then what my goals were, which was the big aha moment.
And then for fans who may not be aware, you did have a rematch with him in the UFC and you destroyed him.
Yeah.
That was just a one-sided battle.
Yeah, then I brought the pain to it. Plus, he was picking on me. He was, I'm kind of sensitive, and I was bullied and stuff quite a bit. And
right.
He was picking on me, sending me like mean texts and Facebook messages. It was early in social media, and like calling room service to my room in the middle of the night and just completely messing with me. So, but the minute we faced off, I was like, "Stay focused, stay calm, stay focused," and then I just teed off on him. And Maurice was yelling at me. He's like, "Calm down." I'm like, "I'm going to kill you." Like,
yeah, you looked mad in that fight. It was different than, let's say, the fight you had before against Jeremy, where, I mean, this fight, you looked like you wanted to make a statement. You wanted to beat him up.
Yeah, I was like schoolyard mad. Like, that's it. Draw the line. Like, I was so mad.
And then what's funny is he trained with Tito before you fought him. So he was in Tito's camp. And then I think you guys kind of squashed the beef, you and John Lober, after that fight, after you beat him. And then the beef kind of resurfaced when you had Tito coming up. And then I think you told me that you ran into John Lober in the airport. He's like, "Oh, I feel bad for you. Tito's going to destroy you. He's going to beat your ass." And then that fight was like straight out of a movie, because it was a fight where Tito's winning every round. He's winning every round. We're like, wow, Frank's in trouble. And then all of a sudden, Tito's out of energy. You took over, finished the fight. It was really cool to watch. And then you flicked off Tito's corner because you said John Lober was over there. So you're like, yeah, boom, have some of that.
Yeah, because he told me, Tito's going to beat you down. But it was like this, because after I beat him up, I felt bad because I'm like a compassionate person. So I go over to him. He's in the airport. His whole face is like chopped open. And I went over to apologize. I was like, "Buddy, I'm sorry about your face," because he's never going to look the same. It's like, "Buddy, I'm so sorry." And it's like, And then he got all like, manly emotional and was like, "Hey, it was my bad. And I picked on you. And, I just did it to get myself up." And it was like a really human thing to say. Right. I was like, "Oh, John," like, "Oh, okay. Squash beefed. We're even." And then all of a sudden I see him again the next time. And he's like, "Tito's going to beat your ass." I was like, whoa. He's going to manhandle you. I was like, whoa, John, like, where's that coming from? So the minute I beat him, I went over and I was like, that's for you, John. That's for you. But yeah, I felt based in the airport. He's got probably 18 stitches in his face. He's just mashed. And we had like a man moment. And then he turned on me again.
Do you find that as someone who's been through some abuse, you were in the foster care system, do you find that when someone tries to bully you in any way, whether it's physical or like in the context of business, that you have a very strong overreaction, like you push what I call the nuclear button?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it's visceral, just instantly. And then also for the disadvantage, like if I see you taking advantage of someone or if I feel like that's happening,
right.
It doesn't seem right. So, my family, you step up and you just say something, and then you do something.
Because I think when you go through abuse as a kid and you're powerless, right? You couldn't do anything about that situation. When you grow older and you're stronger and now you can handle yourself, I think you have this mentality of never again. So even if it's like 20% in your direction, you're going to go 100% back. Even if it's like a little bit.
I don't mess around. It was better when I could beat people up all the time and I had the whole thing in my pocket. Now it's you measure it, but I certainly feel, and that's what the charity is about. That's why I spend so much time helping kids and supporting charities. I remember being that kid. I remember living in the park because I was too scared to go home. I remember eating out of trash cans, and I remember all that like it was yesterday. And I see my 8-year-old daughter, and I know that in a few more years she'll be where I was. Yeah. And I have a choice. I can lock her in a closet. I can traumatize her with stupid stuff, and or I can be a good patient, focused, loving parent, which is a tremendous commitment and sacrifice in this society.
Oh yeah.
But hey, I'm into it. So
Now you talk a lot about this in your book, which is great, your autobiography. Now, when did you grew up in? How did you end up in the foster care system? Right? Was it something where your parents had some issues and you were taken away by the system? How did that whole thing happen?
Yeah, I was taken away by the system, but it was really my own doing, which was in the end my undoing. I just started committing a series of small crimes and stealing stuff and being a knucklehead. And then, that got me to a position where one day I was throwing rocks at a train. And in the state of California, throwing rocks at a train is a felony, regardless of your age, because it's dangerous. Trains going 70, rocks going 20, hits the conductor in the head at 90, and it kills him.
Right.
So I don't know. I'm 11 years old. I'm a knucklehead. And, you know, I'd been in trouble before, but this time they gave me 10 days in juvenile hall. You know, they took me out of my home. It was the first time I ever been out of my home where I hadn't run away and, you know, hid at the park for a night. And I was around all the bad kids, and they're like, you know, I told them my stories, and they're like, bro, that's the worst stuff we've ever heard. They're like, that's horrible. And I was like, oh no, these are the bad kids. Tell me my life is horrible. Like, this can't get any worse. And, you know, I sat down with my counselor, and she's like, listen, you know, you keep doing this, you're going to get taken out of your home. And I'm like, bingo, lights on. You know, crime is the vehicle to get out of my home. I went home, and, you know, I was out in a week. And it was, you know, but once I was in the system, then the state was my parents, and they were taking care of me, and, you know, they looked after me, and I just didn't have the emotional stability from all the abuse, and I didn't have, you know, the communication skills to function well in public and in a community without doing stupid stuff and, you know, stealing things, breaking things, burning things, being out of control. And it wasn't until I got into the Shamrock Boys Ranch, which was 3 or 4 or 5 placements later, because I learned if you don't like it and people are bugging you, you tell them to F off, you break the law, and you're back home in juvenile hall waiting for your next placement. But there's a ticking clock of escalating crime next to you. And, you know, the Shamrock Boys Ranch was right before you go to youth prison. So I was already the biggest knucklehead you could ever find by the time I got there. You know, I got first family structure, my first dad, my first brothers, you know, my first accountability, real community. It was the first family. And I didn't get that till I was 12, almost 13 years old.
And how did this whole interest in MMA develop? Was it through meeting Ken?
Yeah, I mean, it just came out of nowhere. Ken was the super athlete guy.
Yeah.
Was always doing this and doing that wrestling and walked on to the Chargers. And, you know, I was goofy, long-haired nerd kid. I kept, you know, I can only make it a week in sport, and I'd get kicked out because someone would say something or pick on me, and I'd be like, oh, no, you don't. And we'd be getting down, and I'd get out, or, you know, the coach would hurt my feelings, and I'd have to leave because I wasn't emotionally, you know, stable.
Yeah.
Been traumatized. So I never got to do it, but Ken did, and he was amazing at it. And it wasn't until I screwed up the Boys Ranch, ended up, you know, trying to go, you know, they were trying to send me to youth prison, and, you know, transferred myself to adult prison, that I was sitting in prison and learning about this new sport and wrestling and everything else that's happening. You know, my dad, Bob's like, you know, you could do this. I'm like, wow, really? Because I don't like to fight. I don't want to hurt nobody. I'm like the most passive guy in the world. But I could see it growing, and it's the only thing I ever had. You know, I knew how to lift weights. I knew how to steal and rob, and I knew how to con people, and that was it.
Seems that one thing martial arts gives you is self-discipline. And I think that'll carry over to the ability to control your emotions and your thoughts. Did you find?
And self-confidence.
Yeah, right.
And it gives you purpose.
Right.
And I didn't think I was ever going to make it. Like, it didn't seem like I was going to make it. You know, there was nothing to go home to, or there was no support. So even if I did make it, it didn't seem like it mattered. And that's just a terrible spot to be when you're, you know, a teenager.
Right.
You know, and the Boys Ranch gave me all that. You know, when I went to spend my stuff, Bob was like, yeah, that's nice. He's like, we don't do that here. He's like, you earn, you know, you receive. It's like, it's, you know, 1 for 1. Like, that's how it works. And that's that. And then you eat at the table and you show respect. And he was the first one that ever did that for me.
Yeah. Did you feel that you were just waiting for the true colors to come out, where, like, okay, this looks like a good situation, but there's got to be something bad that's going to happen eventually?
Oh, totally.
You're just constantly in that state of defense. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what Ken always said too. I mean, it took years and years for us to, you know, trust. You know, even though Bob opened his home and just lovingly shared his family and made you part of the family instantly, you know, still when you come, I mean, Ken was living in cars when he was 10 years old. I mean, he was stabbed, you know, trying to rob somebody when he was 10 years old, living in a car.
Wow.
Like, when you live like that, you know, and even though Bob is the most loving person in the world, it's hard to trust anybody.
Yeah.
Right.
Parents are selling you out. You know, your own my mom was locking me in the closet. You know, my dad was psychologically abusing me. When you lose trust in your parents, then who do you trust?
Right.
So that's where, you know, that's where the rules come in, and that's where martial arts and guidance and structure, and because it's, you can rely on it. You know, 1 for 1. A kick equals a bruise or a block or it's a great life teacher.
It's interesting that you're so compassionate, because I kind of have a theory about abuse. When you've been through really severe abuse, there's generally 2 paths you go into. One is extremely self-destructive, which could be continuing that abuse. And the other could be just 100% compassion, where not only do you not want to go through that again yourself, you don't want anyone to feel what you went through. So you start becoming very compassionate to the feelings of others and the suffering of others.
And it even works on the other side. If you haven't been physically abused or like directly abused, but if you've witnessed it, where you were left out of the equation, but you saw it, like I saw a lot of that growing up. And it's just like, I would just say, I got to break this cycle, man. I'm not going through this with my kids. And, this past week, I even had that discussion with my nephew. Just like, dude, this is not your legacy. What our parents did or what our immediate relatives did or whatever doesn't mean that we're damned to do the same thing. It's not, so many people use that excuse like, well, it's just how it is. This is all I know. Well, it's time to try to find some new things and learn some new things. You don't have to just give in to that. And so, and one of those things, that's another reason why I just want to make sure that, my children or any kids I come in contact with never have to see or hear or feel those things. And I think that really helps out. And I think that's what's really missing with a lot of our youth today, when people, they're just quick to turn on them like, oh, these kids are thugs, or, there's no hope for these kids, where a lot of times they just needed what you had, Frank, was just having that strong male figure around. It doesn't have to be your birth father or something like that, or an uncle, but, something like that. It can just be that strong male figure where you realize, like, you know what? There's a chance I could actually I don't have to end up like this, and have this situation forever.
And having brotherhood.
Yeah.
Something that was really valuable to me, because, and this is what I learned in martial arts, is when you have that brother to go to and train with and work through things with, and then practice together, and you develop those deep human connections that stop you from self-destruction and,
exactly.
Deepen your empathy. And, because when I came out, I spent my whole life incarcerated. I felt bad about hurting people, but it didn't stop me from hurting them.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because I was angry as well, and I had issues to work through. So, there was a lot going on, but I hurt a lot of people, really bad, because, a lot happened to me and I had to work through it.
Yeah.
And that's what I tell people. How do they, what does it mean to you? I go, well, I'm just working through my issues. So I told people halfway through my career, because it was, there was that much going on that I needed, such an intense, physical and, spiritual and social and, connection to develop me.
Yeah. Intense physical training can be very cathartic as well, or it can act as a real cleansing vehicle.
Oh, yeah.
That's why a lot of people have real emotional breakdowns when they start doing intense physical training. And sometimes we laugh at that. It's like, why is this lady crying over the workout? And it's not necessarily the workout she's crying over. It's just that all these repressed feelings are surfacing.
Exactly. It's that breakthrough.
Yeah, and that's why you got to work out every day. Yeah. You don't work out. It's like a computer. You don't defrag a little bit and, reorganize. You're gonna crash. Your mind, your body, your spirit, everything. You got it every day.
Well, what's your training like nowadays? Because you're retired. You're still practicing martial arts, of course. Do you have a consistent strength training regimen that you still apply to?
I do yard work. I turn a shovel, which is about it.
Amen.
And I hike.
Yeah.
And that's about it. And it's just because I've tried a various number of workouts in the past 5 years after retiring and healing. And pretty much all of them cause joint pain, discomfort, spinal misalignment, spinal fatigue. And I find that if I hike 3 or 4 days a week, and I eat good and I keep good posture and I sleep good, I feel amazing. And I look good, like I used to be an athlete and I didn't let myself go.
Right. You don't have the dad bod right now.
No, I'm thinking it's a win because I can still stand up, not like crippled. I feel good after the career, but I can't do much, to be honest with you. Unless I'm in the water and I do something to alleviate the impact. It's just the body's worn out.
What about head trauma? Have you ever had any scans or anything? Do you feel that you've suffered any memory loss or anything along those lines?
Nope. No, I based my whole system on not getting hit and not getting hurt. Number one, not getting hit. Number two, not getting hurt. And every technique is first protect yourself while you're doing the most amount of damage with the least amount of effort.
Yeah, I was just telling Mike, Rob, before you hopped on the call that I saw that the Nevada, state commission had pretty much passed like where they're going to start doing brain testing on athletes, on all combat athletes, martial arts, boxing, kickboxing, MMA, and doing that for all of them. It's not going to cost the athlete anything to do this. It's taking about like 15 minutes for them to do the scan and look for these proteins that pretty much give an indication of traumatic brain injury. And, I was just wondering, I had posted on Twitter, like, is this a step in the right direction? And, because a lot of times when people start talking about traumatic brain injury, just like we had Andrew Marr from Warrior Angels Foundation on a couple of weeks ago, we were talking about that with combat soldiers. And then, of course, the movie Concussion came out. So then the direction was pointed toward guys in the NFL. But no one ever really thinks about the combat athlete, who's like constantly getting punched in the head over and over and over.
Punch the head.
Yeah, exactly. And then they wonder, I was watching that Brian Gumbel special back on HBO, probably back in last fall, and they were just talking about the correlation between mixed martial artists and like violence with like their spouses and things like that. And, what was the correlation? I think they were pretty much hinting toward a lot of this could be toward all the traumatic brain injury that's going on. That's kind of like making these guys have short fuses. And, I think that could just be part of the problem. I don't know. What do you think about that? I think there might be some other things as well.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is lifestyle choices that, complicate these things. But there's no doubt every time you bump your head and you see stars, you have damaged your brain. Right. So if you're getting plowed in the head, if you're putting a helmet on and running into 300-pound men, if you're getting knocked unconscious, if you're seeing stars, if you get knocked to a knee, you are getting minor brain damage. That happens to these people all the time. So it's not that, he took a good shot, look, he got knocked out. It's just that his style, his mindset, his system is X, and he took 1,000 of those before the fight. And his brain is now damaged because every shot causes damage. It's not if your brain is shaken inside of your head, there's damage. That's just it.
I find it ironic that the fans always encourage that everybody wants to knock out. Everybody wants to see, somebody get knocked out, but then let one of these athletes get in trouble in the news for, he's beating his wife or he got into another altercation on the street or something like that. And then they start killing the guy. Like, he's such an animal. But, these were the same people who were paying good money to see him behave as an animal in a cage. So quickly how they turn on him.
Well, it's tough. But, at the end of the day, and this was a lot of my struggle, is I know I'm getting brain damaged. And I know I'm damaging somebody else. That's a struggle. And I know as a smart businessman, as an entertainer, as all the goals that I want to have, I have to create a system and a style that protects that. Most important. Because, I could break an arm, I could keep going. I could, twist a knee out and, still broadcast. But if I can't string two words together, then I'm done. And I'm an old punch-drunk fighter.
Right. Seemed like you knew when to exit. Right. Because we've seen a lot of MMA fighters where
it's time.
Well, they lose. You get knocked out 5 times in a row, and then you finally give up. Right? It probably would have been better if you gave up after the second knockout rather than the fifth.
I've only been knocked out 1 time. And I've only been stunned in a fight 3 times.
Which fight were you knocked out in?
I was knocked out in my 5th or 6th professional fight when I fought Yuki Kondo in Japan. It was very young.
Pancrase, right?
Yeah. I wasn't knocked out from a blow. I fell through the ropes and I landed on top of my head on the concrete floor.
Ouch.
And knocked me unconscious. And it's the only time I've ever lost time and was unconscious except for being choked out. But getting choked out doesn't cause the same damage because it's not a traumatic blow to your head. It just turns the blood off and on again.
Right.
So I've been choked out, probably 20 times. But I've never been knocked unconscious. I've only seen stars 3 or 4 times in my entire career.
Yeah, you had a tough fight against Kung Lee. That was actually a very competitive fight, though. And then I think your arm got broken, right, in the 3rd round?
Snapped my right ulna.
Yeah.
Very painful. Extremely painful. And Kung got me with saw some stars on Kung. Kicked me one time right in the side of the head. Never saw the kick. And knocked my mouthpiece out. And I was like, what the? Someone had come over the cage and hit me with a stick. So I was like, what just happened? I didn't even see it.
You guys trained together quite a bit because you're both based in San Jose. So I think he helped you prepare for some of your fights in the UFC, and I think you might have helped him prepare for some of his fights in another organization. So was there anything surprising to you in that fight, or were these things you'd seen before?
No, I knew his style through and through. And the truth was I was his sparring partner for years, and he would just beat on me because I had nowhere near his skill.
Right.
His style was very selective. It was, boxing with takedowns or kickboxing with takedowns. Very, very, very selective.
Right.
But I was the only guy that would go after him, and he could club on me, and I would just, keep coming and never stop. So I, got volunteered to be that guy. He would just beat the hell out of him. And he was a good wrestler. But I knew when it came to submissions, and I knew if I started rolling and turning my back and doing stuff, I would just annihilate him.
Yeah.
So, like literally the day of the show, I woke up and I go, I think I'm totally going to stand up with him. And I was telling everybody, but I was totally lying, and I was just misdirecting everybody and being, Frank Shamrock and all that. But I woke up and I go, oh my God, and I can do it. Like, and that was, so that I stood up with him like a.
So it was kind of a challenge to yourself, right? You're like, okay, let me see if I can beat him at his own game.
Yeah, and I think that's what it was. Is I'd been in it so long, and I'd done everything, and I was looking for things to keep me in the gym and excited, and and it was tough, and that made it made it exciting for me that I could fight Kung in my sport in his style and beat him.
Yeah,
who knows.
and then it was the next fight was also interesting because you fought Nick Diaz, and that was kind of a passing of the torch because Nick, he has a different style than you, but in terms of talking smack to the opponent, that's something that you had done for a long time. Like when you fought Tito, you were just talking smack to him the whole time. Like, oh, you're getting tired, Tito. It's like you're going to give up soon, buddy. So that was, I don't know if anyone else did that at your prime in the UFC, but he was very good. He's still very good at that. So that was an interesting fight because that was somewhat of a passing of the torch, and he talked a lot of smack to you before the fight, but he also had a lot of respect for you, especially afterwards. Did you feel like that was it for you after that? You're like, you know what? It's time for me to move on.
Yeah, I did. And I could feel it wrapping up physically and then my interests, business-wise. Because it's just getting harder and harder to train. I was getting older and, I've been going like 16 years by then.
Right.
And I even, after Nick beat me, I always sit down, I evaluate these things like a business. I look at the training, I look at the costs, I do a physical and I could look at it like a project. And I looked at it and I was like, it was all good. I got hurt, my training had to be adjusted. But when it came to it, and I went to turn the switch on, the old famous, here it goes moment, it just didn't go.
Yeah.
It just, it was click, click. And I was like, wow, that didn't happen. And I was like, punch, punch, click, click. And it just didn't go. And I was like, that never happened before. So I thought it might be a fluke. And I, chalked it up to getting older and, I was not focused. And so I went back to training camp and I tried it again just to train and see if I could, get a baseline of what my skill level was and interest and value. And it was nothing. Like, it was just like, I go, oh, okay. So it's like 2 weeks. I go, I'm done. I got lawyers. I'm like, I think I'm done. I go, there's nothing. I think that's it. There's nothing left.
Doesn't sound like it was too hard for you to give up because you're such a cerebral guy and you had other things going on as well. But do you find that with a lot of fighters, it's even when you're just losing and you're not the same, it's just so difficult for them to walk away?
100%. Yeah. It was even hard for me.
Yeah.
And I walked away in business and in all that, but mentally, I retired the first time when I was like 26 or something to get out of my contract. But mentally, I wanted to fight all the fighters in the world. So it's just a tough battle.
Right.
But when you don't want to fight, that's when you get hurt. When you're done, that's when you get hurt. And I don't want to get hurt. And I, know that the end's going to come. So I've always just prepared for it. And I've always tried to get out. Like, if there's a door, I'm stepping through it the moment. We're fighting in a cage for money. Just go to the simplest, segment. And you want to get out. You should always be trying to get out of this game because you can't live in a cage fighting for money. It does not work.
It was funny when you were in that show with Ken on Spike, right, where you guys kind of picked up your relationship, and Ken's saying, okay, I think you and I should fight as a way to, and you're like, come on, man, I don't want to fight you. You're like, why don't we have to do that?
It's like your neighbor comes over, he knocks on your door, like, listen, I'm not liking your lawn, we got to fight. It's like, whoa. But, that's the world that we lived in. But now it seems so foreign. I teach second grade PE, and I'm like on the PTA. And,
oh, really? Okay.
And I'm like a super nerd social dad. And it's like a whole nother universe. When Ken's asking me to fight him, I can't even imagine.
It's like, dude, I'm chaperoning a zoo field trip this weekend. Yeah. Really? Between I'm not going on a field trip with a black eye. Are you crazy? What's wrong with you?
Now, you were a business partner with Strikeforce too, right? Were you an investor, or you were just what was your relationship there? Because I know it was more than just a fighter.
Yeah, no, I was a partner.
Okay.
And the brand spokesman, and the broadcaster, and the main event athlete.
Oh, so you had a lot of hats in that organization.
I had a lot of hats in the Raw. I mean, I helped launch the whole thing. Scott and I really sat down over coffee, and he was like, we'd been trying stuff for years in Japan, and we worked together with K1, and we had a lot of success working together. And he literally sat down over coffee one day on our weekly and was like, I want to do MMA. I'm like, no way. You know how expensive it is, and how risky it is, and the players. And he's like, I want to do MMA. He's like, what does it cost? And he wrote me a big old giant check, and we started our relationship, and it was hugely successful.
Yeah. It was how did that feel when the UFC bought it out? Was I mean, I'm sure that was a big plus for you financially, but were you sad to see it go?
Totally. Yeah. I mean, I was torn. Yeah. Because, as a businessman, I was, prepared and taken care of and excited. And, the flip side was, the little engine that could not anymore. Right. And, you could feel that the momentum and the spirit of the whole thing, just kind of gotten, whooped out of it. But it's business. When you're on the ground floor and these type of acquisitions and changes happen, you feel the emotion, much more than the guy who's wearing the suit, signing the thing, because, he's used to it.
I think it's important for fighters to have options, and I think it was nice for fighters to have a viable option with Strikeforce or the UFC. I mean, you have Bellator now, and you have a couple other organizations, but the UFC is the main game. And I think in a lot of ways it's tough for fighters to really negotiate as a result of that.
Yeah, it pinches down the marketplace. And when we had Showtime competing with the UFC, that was a good time.
Right.
Yeah. That was a good moment to be making money in the sport as an athlete. And guys made money. And, the concern now is the sport's getting bigger, guys are making less money.
Yeah.
That doesn't make any sense.
I remember you and Mara were talking about Gina Carano's fight. And Mara was making the point, like, there's still a lot of sexism in the industry. Anytime Gina walks in, everyone has to talk about how good looking she is. And Mara's like, no one talks about how good looking you are, Frank. And you're like, well, they should. Come on. You're like, I wouldn't mind that at all.
Yeah, right. It's okay.
You guys were very ahead of the curve with female MMA. Right, because Dana White, UFC, they didn't want to have anything to do with it. While Strikeforce, you had Cyborg fighting there, you had Gina Carano there, Miesha Tate, Ronda Rousey started off there. So you guys saw an opportunity where other people didn't think there was one.
No, and we'd had a little, Coker had experience from the Bay Area with promoting kickboxing, girls kickboxing, and they always brought the house down. The girls, getting after it were always a big seller. They were always one of the highlights of the evening. So, they took a risk. Showtime took a risk. And, it paid off huge. The biggest stars in the sports, in the sport have been females.
Right.
Up to this point. In all honesty, the ones that transcended and gone to the next level, the biggest stars, if you will, have been, ladies.
Yeah. Gina started off there, and now she's in movies left and right. Ronda's the biggest name in UFC. Now Miesha, who was the Strikeforce champion, is a big name in UFC, so that's definitely true.
You got Cyborg about to have her debut with the UFC now, which is something people have been waiting on forever, and that's a stacked card coming up, man. That's that Brazilian card. It's crazy.
Yeah, Cyborg is scary.
Yeah.
She's a scary fighter to watch.
So understatement, Mike.
And the worst or the best part is she is the sweetest, lady.
And it seems that way in all her interviews.
Tiny voice, just sweetheart. Like you want to hug her. And then you watch her train, you watch her fight, and you're like, oh my gosh, don't let her get near me. Like, it's completely intimidating and scary.
And see, Frank, that's what makes her scary. She can just turn on that switch just like that. And it's just that Incredible Hulk type situation where he goes from Bruce Banner to the Hulk.
Yeah, you don't want to be her husband or boyfriend and get into a little fight, and all of a sudden you're getting knocked out. How did it escalate to this?
You just wake up like, what happened? You didn't take out the trash. That's what happened.
I got to ask you about your experience on Oz, because we always make Oz reference jokes on this show because we're both fans of that. So you had a reoccurring role. It was somewhat of a small part, but you were on it for a few episodes. What was it like being on set, especially for someone like you who had been through the system? Was it just eerie in a way? Did you have any kind of flashback when you're on the set going, oh man, this feels a little bit too authentic?
Nah, it felt pretty authentic actually, but it was pretty cool actually. It was high level production. So my very first TV show was Walker, Texas Ranger gig where I fought Chuck Norris. And then, so I was in prison on my very first ever.
Oh yeah, that's right.
The very first role ever. I'm back in prison. I'm like, this is not good. So doing it was really cool, and the actors were great, and it was a nice set. Like everyone was down. Like they were really into the prison, vibe and experience, and it felt like you were in prison. I mean, people were, and then some of the guys I knew from prison. Like it was really eerie. I was like, this is just too much.
Oh wow.
But that's what gave it that great feel. I mean, you felt like, wow, I'm looking inside of a prison. And
that show is the ultimate scared straight show.
Oh my gosh!
Show any kid that show.
I did it to my son just when he was kind of going through those early teen years and he was just kind of acting out. I was like, oh, really? Okay, I'm gonna show you where you're heading. And so I showed some of the most gruesome scenes. Most parents are there like, how could you do that? Like, I was like, no, that's the reason why he's a stand-up kid now. He saw that. He straightened up quickly. Especially when you see like your favorite rapper, all of a sudden he's getting, he's about to get gang raped in the shower. He's like, okay, you don't look at Method Man the same anymore. So it's like, you can't even listen to a Wu-Tang album the same anymore. It's like, I saw what happened to Method Man on Oz, and I'm going to go ahead and say.
There was some very disturbing stuff on there. Luckily, I didn't have to participate in it.
Well, I was going to say, did you have a clause in your contract? No rape scenes.
I definitely would have, no pun intended, pushed back on that. Exactly. I would not want to be
like, no, we're not doing this. You know what's funny is, I don't know if you've seen the show Sons of Anarchy, but the writer for it, I think Kurt, I forget his last name, Kurt Sutter, he also did The Shield. Now he's a weird cat because he has rape scenes in both, and it seems like every show he's ever done, The Shield and Sons of Anarchy. Now, what makes him even more weird is that he acts in some of his shows, and there was an episode of Sons of Anarchy where he's in it as a biker member getting raped. Now, I was like, why would you put that scene in there as the writer?
That's when you're all in, man.
Yeah, exactly.
Literally.
That's commitment.
Because somebody was like, listen, man, I'm not doing that. And it's like, I'll do it.
Okay, screw it.
Yeah, he's leading by example.
That's how you get it done.
If I'm the writer, I'm like, no. If I'm the writer and the actor, I'm going to be selective with my scenes.
I love it. No, that's believing though. You gotta believe, otherwise, no one will follow you.
Yeah, you took some acting. You moved out to Santa Monica for a while, didn't you? Weren't you taking acting classes for a while?
I did. Yeah, I went to the Joanne Barron D.W. Brown School of Dramatic Acting in Venice. Yeah, really enjoyed it. Yeah, just 4-hour classes of just dig deep, bawling your eyes out acting, and I really enjoyed it. It was actually one of the tools that helped me emotionally and start digging into my emotional, barriers and issues and stuff.
Yeah. I think a lot of actors feel that way too.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's why they pursue it. It becomes that cathartic, experience. And I think a lot of these people are driven into themselves or into their own creativeness.
Right.
And then there's a desire to come out in expression. I thoroughly enjoy it. But I liked the acting. I was the only guy I had to sign an addendum to my contract so that I could eat. It's 4 hours and you can't eat. And I'm like, guys, I can't make it 4 hours. Like, I'm sorry. They're like, what do you like? They're like, no Hollywood stars ever asked for a meal. I'm like, well, I need a meal. So they were they either thought I was crazy or I was going to be the next big thing because they were just like, they kind of acquiesced and were like, okay, we'll let you eat. So I was like, all right.
Yeah, because you've always been a believer in 5 or 6 small meals throughout the day, right?
Yeah, because I get hungry.
Yeah.
And I feel my mind slip. So for me, it's about consistent fuel and good fuel and hydration. And I can feel when it's bad, because my body's, it's pure and clean and I feed it all the time.
Right. Now, what do you think about with strength training in the reference of MMA? That's kind of a controversial topic. You have some people like Steve Maxwell who believes that you should just focus on the sport you're doing. So if you want to get better at takedowns, you just keep drilling takedowns. If you want to get better at punching power, you just keep working on technique there. And then there's others who believe that you should work on strong compound lifts, the powerlifting stuff, kind of like what John Jones is doing right now. Do you feel that powerlifting, the way John Jones is doing it, is beneficial for MMA, or is that a distraction?
I think it's beneficial.
Yeah.
And I think for all of these, that's really according to where your body's at and in your development, in your career.
Yeah.
If you're a new guy and you're not strong, you need to do both.
Right.
But it comes down to, the power is the technique. That's number one. But if you have more power in your technique,
right,
you are infinitely better.
Right.
But then again, if you have no technique and lots of power, you're not going to make it long.
Right.
So it really is a tit for a tat. But yeah, you should develop. Here's what I learned and what I know right now, and the reason why I would never go in and fight. I don't have enough muscle mass to take the abuse, the damage, the contusions, the twists, the turns that is needed to participate at that level.
Yeah.
And you need strong, dense, flexible, good muscle. Mm-hmm. That can take damage. If you don't, you'll break stuff. Like there's that much impact and, twisting and turning that you'll snap things right off.
Yeah.
So you need the strength to hold the machine together and to be effective with the technique. And the more strength, the better.
Right. No, that makes perfect sense. You get better at technique by obviously practicing the technique, but if you want to improve the power to transfer to that technique, then you need to be stronger. And that's where the strength and conditioning program makes sense.
And you have to have it, because if you don't, all you need is one guy who's, 3 points stronger and, equal in technique, and he'll beat you.
Yeah.
Because he's got 3 points more.
Right.
You'll tire out first.
Right. I mean, when you were fighting, I at least in the early stages, you were doing some powerlifting. I remember I saw you doing stiff-legged deadlifts. You were doing heavy presses, pull-ups, etc. At a different phase, is somewhat of a bodybuilding regimen. Was that just to fortify the body, make it strong, make it more resilient?
Yeah, for me, because of my back and I had all the, spinal issues, I could never do any of the big lifting, the big squatting, the heavy lifting. Last time I did that was in 20s in prison, teens and 20s.
Right.
So after that, it just became like a bodybuilding routine. It was about keeping muscle mass on my body, maintaining enough density so I wouldn't get hurt.
Right.
And then, it was also, my natural weight's about 182 pounds. So I had to hold 10 extra pounds of muscle while training 4 or 5 times a day.
Right.
So I was just constantly consuming calories to maintain all the muscle so I could compete in the weight class where the money was.
Yeah.
Because there was no other weight classes and no other money for little guys.
Right.
So it was the bigger, I tried to stay as big as I could. So for me, it was about muscle mass. And strength I never was concerned about because I never was a strong person. I don't have that. Ken Shamrock is a, pull off 400 pounds and bench it any day type strong person.
Right.
I was never that guy. I don't have those, dense, thick muscles. Mine are all mushy and go right to the bone.
Yeah. So
for me, I just need to be fast and flexible and have enough to withstand the trauma.
Right. Mark Kerr was another guy that was he's the guy you would think of for power.
Oh, yeah.
Just ridiculously strong. And he worked with you, and I think I read in some interview somewhere, he said that you were the sharpest guy in the game. You have the highest IQ. You had the best advice on strength training and conditioning for the sport.
Well, yeah, I think at my time I was the super nerd.
Right. Because, Tito came to you after he lost you and said, what do I need to do to improve? And you said you need to work on your conditioning.
Totally. And
then you have him doing a lot of stuff on the pre-core machine.
Yeah, I gave him the vascular because he really lost in vascular condition. I think muscularly he would have made it.
Right.
But vascularly, there was no way he could keep, maintain that speed during our fight.
Yeah, and conditioning was never a problem for him again. After all of his subsequent fights, his conditioning was great.
Yeah, no, it completely, fixed that. And that's what Maurice Smith did for me. I never knew anything about conditioning because I wasn't an athlete. So, or cardiovascular rather. And the first time he taught me about cardiovascular, and then I could adjust my system. Because before I had to fight according to how much energy I had. So techniques that I would want to apply, I'd have to value decision on, do I have enough energy to apply it?
Right.
And and then I never knew that wasn't normal, that you could just make yourself vascularly so strong that you could just react and make the best biomechanical motion necessary. When I learned that, I was like, wow, I'm going to kill everybody.
Right.
And that's how I did.
Yeah, because a lot of people look at using an elliptical machine or a pre-core machine. They go, oh, that's not functional. That's not what you're doing in your sport. And they're kind of missing the point, right? Yeah. You're working on those energy systems so that you have the endurance and the structural integrity to last when you want to do what you want to do in the ring.
Yeah, because to maintain a speed that's near vascular, you've got to be in great shape, for 15 minutes, for a championship round. You're going to be in amazing vascular shape, besides the muscular shape, the conditioning, besides all the others. Your vascular conditioning needs to be amazing.
Did you ever find that after your fights, someone would just recognize you on the street, and they would just someone who obviously looks like they've never been in any kind of fight ever in their life would just start giving you advice, like, "Hey man, you need to work on this." I was some guy drinking a Bud Light with the gut, going, "Look, man, you need to work on this."
No, I mean, I've gotten a couple of pieces of advice. They're usually from well-meaning, like martial arts folks.
Right.
And it's usually online where people give me quality advice. But I have gotten this odd situation where I meet people and they're so excited that they kind of forget that I'm Frank Shamrock, and they start telling me the story of how they train with Frank Shamrock. And then they start going on this journey, and I'm trying to participate in the journey but not tell them I'm Frank Shamrock, because it seems really weird at the moment. And I just let them go on, and I try to divert and get away as soon as possible. But they're like, "Oh my God, we trained, it was amazing." And I'm looking at the guy going, "I've never trained with this guy. I would remember." And they tell me these stories, and I'm like, "Man," I go, "that sounds awesome." And I just try to leave because I don't know what to do. And I'm flattered by it because that someone's making up a story that entail is awesome.
It's like, you missed your calling, but he should have been a writer in Hollywood. I know a guy.
I don't want to participate. I'm just like, that sounds amazing. And I'm like, run. That's cool.
So let's talk about you're doing a lot of charitable stuff now too with the Shamrock Way. What inspired you to start this path?
Well, when my dad passed in 2010, I really felt the loss, and I wanted to do something with his name, and besides make money and, all the life I've been blessed with. So I've been kind of tinkering with the idea and working with Ken. And we weren't talking back then, so it took a few years to get it going. But at the beginning of last year, I started getting some requests to pitch TV shows about certain things. And I pitched a whole bunch of them, and I sold a couple. And one of the guys asked me, "What do you really want to do?" And I started telling him about the Boys Ranch. And as I was telling him, I was realizing this passion that I felt and that I really wanted to do it. So originally it was a TV show, and we started, producing a TV show, and I got about halfway into it. And then I stopped and I went, wait a minute, we can't produce a TV show. That's ridiculous. We need to produce the real thing, right, and make a TV show about it. TV, you've created backwards. So I put the brakes on everything. I said, wait a minute, I don't want to be a TV producer and do this stuff. I want to do this for real and help people and make an impact with at-risk youth and their communities and do what the Boys Ranch did for me. And I got my whole group together, and I said, listen, they're all TV producers. I said, this is what I want to do. And they all thought I was crazy, but they gave me money and they gave me their blessing. And so I filed a nonprofit last year, and we're up and running. We're shamrockway.org. We protect at-risk youth in their communities. And we have an event tonight that's actually May the 3rd. It'll air at 7 p.m. All of our events are going to be live, and they're fundraisers. I'm teaching martial arts to the world. I'm teaching it for free at various martial arts schools around the country. And we're streaming it on the internet so that you can participate. And then we're having a live auction and a Q&A afterwards. And that's like the crazy fundraiser thing that we're doing next. And our goal is to reopen the Shamrock Boys Ranch. They want to create that community ranch, that family atmosphere where, kids on the edge, instead of going to jail and youth prison like I did, they can go to the ranch and get a readjustment on life.
Yeah. Is this something, or do you already have a bunch of kids involved right now, or you're in the process of taking people in?
right now we're in the process of building the ranch and taking the land.
Okay.
But yeah, we're at ground zero. We originally tried to get some partners and go in on ranch that were already existing, and we live in America, so everyone wants to make money.
Right.
We have a nonprofit. We're not interested in making money. We're interested in helping kids. So we pulled back. We're going to buy our own piece of land. We're going to use modified shipping containers to build our own little ranch. It's going to have a dojo right in the middle of it. We're going to teach martial arts, personal development, community participation, mentorship. And we have a bunch of programs that positively influence a community and help young boys.
Yeah. I think this kind of thing is critical because it's all about preventing things rather than waiting for problems to happen and then
reacting.
It's like waiting for your car to completely break down and then you take it to the shop, as opposed to anticipating those things, doing the checkups, making sure things are working before it becomes a problem.
Right.
Yeah, and you talk about youth crime. I mean, it's a $7 billion tab each year.
Yeah,
that we're paying.
Which is
because we're not
because
we're not instituting these programs. We wait until they're where I was, going to youth prison.
Yeah.
Like, wow, you're a total screw up and you got all these felonies. You can't work, but we need you to go do something and get out of here. It's just completely messed up. There's no future for those kids.
Right.
Once you've got that on your record, you can't get hired.
Right.
You can't just show up. And usually those kids have fallen by the wayside scholastically. Which is usually the beginning of these slides.
Yeah.
Usually the community gives up and then the parents give up because they usually have more kids or there's only one parent.
Yeah.
And then financially, the state and the Fed, these funds don't exist for these kids anymore. Not until they're locked up. So they can't get the help until they're locked up.
Yeah.
And that's the problem is you got to get in, like I did, you got to get in jail and get in trouble to get help. Yeah. And that's not how it's supposed to work.
No. So you got to get in trouble to get out of trouble. And that's a big, that's a big assumption. Hoping.
We want to try to switch that up a little bit. And we have the opportunity to do that with the ranch and the charity.
Yeah. Now, I think another problem is the fact that a lot of prisons, even youth prisons, are becoming privatized.
That's what I'm saying.
So now judges are incentivized. The more prisoners, the more money you make. And now there's an incentive to fill up these places. I think that's a huge problem.
That's a problem. And, the other problem with our industry is we have therapists and communities that get money for referrals and kickbacks. And, it's become a for-profit industry.
Right.
So kids that need help aren't getting individual personalized development and one-on-one attention in their community. They're getting pushed into these, clinical programs that cost money.
Yeah. It's kind of like healthcare system, right? It's like there's a lot of money being made from people being sick as opposed to preventing them from becoming sick.
There's no money in a cure, man. It's like,
what does a young man really need? A couple of sit-down conversations and some support and some attaboys and a little bit of community.
Absolutely.
The complete box set of Oz.
Yeah.
Like that's, that'll cure you right there.
just an Oz marathon.
Exactly.
We're going to have a fun Saturday. We're going to watch a whole season of Oz.
Just sit him in the living room in the dark. It's like, you're not getting up. Nope, no water. We're going to sit here and watch every last episode.
That's the coming of age moment now. Exactly. Sit down so you watch the whole series.
We're going to do an Adebisi marathon. Like every scene where Adebisi abuses someone for the next few hours. See what you think about that. No, but you're right. I mean, we always talk about the importance of self-belief, but you're not going to have self-belief if no one else believes in you either. That's the interesting 1-2 there. So you need someone else to believe in you first for you to believe in yourself.
Yeah, it's like credit. You can't.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Unless you got it, and then someone's got to give it to you. But that's what most kids. Like I grew up without a dad.
Right.
I didn't know that your dad gives you guidance.
Yeah.
I didn't know that that's what your dad did. Like out and you're like, hey, gangster homie, tell me about this, and that's how you learn stuff. But there's actually somebody whose role is to teach you those things. And when that guy is missing, you go searching for that information elsewhere.
Right.
Exactly.
You make decisions that are not going to benefit you or your family or your community or what your real dreams are.
Yeah.
And if you don't know, like I didn't know, my dream was always to be a world champion. If it hadn't fallen into my lap, if I hadn't have never given up on it, even after going to prison, even after everything else, if I hadn't had that one dream, I'd just be in prison the rest of my life.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if I hadn't found somebody to support it and, it was happening, I'd just be sitting in prison with all the other guys I grew up with in prison. And say, we need to provide that place where kids can go wow, that's Oz. Ain't doing that. And these are my goals. And here's a group that's going to help me make them. It's like, boom, back to work.
Once you get stuck in gang culture and now prison's a rite of passage, right. I mean, it's just the neural pathways that are being built in your mind are extremely unhealthy, to say the least.
Well, it's actually it's a step up from gang life. It's like a lot of kids end up joining gangs because they need somewhere to belong or to feel safe, because a lot of times those gangs are picking on these kids. They're walking home from school or whatever else. So it's a situation where if you can't beat them, join them. And so, and after that, you're kind of on the streets, you're hustling, you're doing all this stuff. But then once you go to prison, you're like, wait a minute. So I get 3 square meals a day. I have somewhere to sleep. I don't have to worry about my clothing. I have to worry about having a roof over my head. Well, hell, why would you want to leave that? Especially when you don't really have to pay for it. The only thing you have to do is just try to survive and enjoy it another day.
Well, also you're going to learn skill sets that make you a better criminal.
Exactly.
If and when you get out.
Exactly.
I learned the best criminality stuff ever going to prison, adult prison, because there was adults teaching me criminal stuff, not kids, who hadn't, trial and error and worked through it. But yeah, it's a problem. We don't have these programs in our communities anymore, and we need to create them. And the martial arts schools are doing a really good job of doing this, because this is where you need to send kids like me. Sports are doing a great job of doing this. But when, I couldn't stay in a sport. I'd freak out and be kicked out. When you can't, because no one knew that when I went home, I was locked in my closet. I didn't get to have dinner with the family.
Yeah.
So I couldn't function. It's like there's some kids who can't because something's going on, and we need to figure out what that is.
Yeah.
And the community can't do it. Sometimes the parents can't do it, won't do it, or are hiding it. And our job is to protect them, because, someone needed to step in and help me. And it just came because, God looks after, kids that need help.
Yeah. And
we want to do the same.
I think the mentality people need to have is look at these things as our problems as opposed to problems that are separate from you. A lot of times, especially during political times right now with the presidential race coming up, people often like to defer responsibility to others. Like, our leader should be doing this, they should be doing that. But what are you doing, as an individual? Because change happens with individuals.
Yeah, no, it's true. And that's the toughest thing I see with bullying right now, too. We're seeing the development of a social disease where people just ignore it. And the kids are taught to ignore it. The parents are ignoring it. And then the kids are learning and perpetuating and doing it because everyone's just ignoring it. And the teachers are ignoring it because no one knows what to do. And I'm there in first grade watching it happen, because it starts in kindergarten. Don't think it happens in third, fourth, fifth grade. It's happening in kindergarten as well, because whatever's going on at home, it's happening in the social community. Whoever's bullying whoever is being, mirrored and monitored and modeled by the children.
Yeah.
And then they're getting, objectified, and they're the bully now, and they're the kid, and that's how they identify. And the whole thing is jacked up.
Yeah.
When someone should go, hey, don't pick on that kid. What's wrong with you? We don't pick on kids. That's wrong. Because that's how you stop it. And then you have another kid who goes, hey, don't pick on that kid. Picking on kids is wrong. And that's what I teach, my daughter. That's what I was taught. That's what Bob Shamrock taught me. Do what's right. But we got a bunch of people looking the other way. They don't want to participate.
Well, then those that want to step in and participate, they're getting ostracized by these people who don't want to participate. Like, you need to stay, like the teachers that try to intervene, like, you need to stay out of it, or don't touch the kid. If you're trying to pull 2 kids apart, from a situation, you touch that kid, and now that teacher is facing being fired and being sued. And so it's just like, I came from a time like, look, man, when things are going down in school, and then, here comes Coach so-and-so. You knew he was coming with that paddle, and you knew to stop. Everybody stopped. It was over. The fight ended. No one kept going, because it's like, you know what? I'd rather get punched in the face later on in the afternoon after school than have to deal with Coach Allen popping me 3 times with that paddle, and then calling my mom, who's going to tell my dad. So it's like that butt whipping is just not going to end that day. So just go ahead and just stop it now, man. But now there's so many precious snowflakes out there that are coming from this. We just all need to just get along, and, we just need to stay away from each other and just stay out of each other's business. And that's how it works. No, it's not each other's business. It's all of our business, because this kid is going to end up now. He has this record that he was a bully, and it stays on there from kindergarten on way to, if he makes it to 12th grade, he's always known as he's had criminal behavior since kindergarten. That's what it translates to. And so that's all he knows, just like you're saying, Frank. And then he's going to end up in the system. And now he's going to become a criminal. We might end up being victimized by him later on. And it all could have been avoided if someone had just stepped in and gave this kid a chance, like, hey, dude, you're better than this. Let me show you why you're better than this, instead of just saying that. Because these kids need to believe it. You can't just tell them that. You're better than being a bully. Well, show me how. Because they may not get that at home from a parent.
Yeah. Yeah.
And now with bullying, it's permeated into other avenues because online bullying is a big problem. And sometimes people laugh at that. They go, oh, that's silly. But you have to realize that as a young person, you're fragile. So if a bunch of people, I would hate to grow up right now as a kid, where I think of some of the dumb stuff I did when I was a teenager, and imagine someone filming that and putting it up on YouTube. And you're just being crucified by the world, potentially.
Right.
Everyone's got their cameras out now. And you're in a really fragile state of development. And those things can be tremendously negative on you. And that's why some kids are committing suicide from these things, or it's
negative behavior,
It's a really big problem.
Yeah, and it doesn't end with the technology.
Right.
Before you go to school, it's tough. You hate going to school. It sucks. You suck it up, and then you keep your head down. Now you go home, and it just keeps going.
Yeah.
And the social media, and it's different. Before, it's a silent, victimless crime where everyone thinks it is, but it's not. That happens at school, and then they go home. They're picked on social media, and everyone joins in. And it's just terrible. And then the bullies, here's what I'm realizing. Most of them don't know that they're a bully.
Mm.
They don't know what they're doing is wrong until they're that guy and they're doing it.
Yeah, because so much is socially acceptable now, thanks to the internet. It's just it's just the way things are.
Yeah, and the problem is these kids are learning it from 0 to 8. Then they know it. It's programmed in them. And that's who they have become. And their tendency is to do that unless trained otherwise. So, by the time they develop and are in a position to be recognized for a bully, they're a bully.
Yeah.
And it's just jacked because, parental figures should have been like, hey, whoa. Listen, this is what we do. This is how instead of grabbing your wife's arm and going, come over here, dummy. That's where you learn things like this.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. The first behaviors you learn are from your parents.
100%.
So then with the bullying thing is, if someone's a bully in the kindergarten, you have to go, okay, well, what's going on at home?
Exactly.
So it can't be a good home environment if this kid's bringing it here.
No child just comes out of the womb like, okay, I'm here, world, now. Give me somebody I can go beat up on now.
Give me some
lunch money. Let me take that bottle from that baby over there.
He just come out gangster.
Exactly. His Pampers sagging and everything. Come on.
It's all about trying to take power back in some way, right? Like you're losing power at home. So then you go to school and you're like, I'm going to pick on this kid because I have power over him. And then that kid's going to feel like, okay, well, this kid just took my power away. Now I got to go pick on someone so I get the power back. So it sounds like with the Shamrock Way, what you're setting up there is, some people say that like George St. Pierre wouldn't be the fighter he is today if it wasn't for all the bullying he went through. And that may be true, but that doesn't mean that we should be bullied as a personal development technique, right? So I think a better alternative to that is what you're setting up, where you're creating these different skill sets. You're creating a competitive environment within the context of martial arts. So you're learning these skill sets, and you're learning how to be tough without taking power from others.
Yeah. Because the only reason why this is not happening is we don't have that parental structure in place, and everyone's too busy, and we're on the internet. Before, we would sit down and be like, son, I need you to hit that kid. Or listen, you got to stand up to him.
Right.
Or, hey, if he's picking on you, here's what you do as a dad. Here's your guidance.
Yes.
When that's not there, or when that figure or that leadership is not there, then they either retreat inside themselves and they become the bully or the bullied, or, they lash out like I did.
Yeah.
But somebody has to guide them. And it's not happening in school. Everyone's afraid. It's not happening online. Everyone's free to say whatever they want, do whatever they want.
Right.
Yeah. But it hurts. If someone says something mean to me, I'm a grown man. But if you come up to me and say something mean, that sucks. And that's going to hurt me.
Right.
That's what it does to a young human being who's a teenager or developing mind. So regardless of what's said, and you can say it freely on social media and have no recourse or ability to back it up.
Right.
Before I'd show up and be like, I don't like you and you bullied me. We're hitting this. and now you don't have that opportunity.
Exactly.
And your parents aren't telling you to go do that.
Yeah. Now you're like, now all you can do is say, I'm going to block you on Facebook.
Exactly. I'm going to create another account and I'm going to keep on messing with you. Just keep trolling,
Keep messing with me, man. I'm going to block you. I'm going to delete you.
The community can stop that, because the community can go, hey, that's not cool.
Right.
Because what nobody wants is to be ostracized out of the community.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because no one wants that.
Right.
And they'll learn. Everyone learns.
No, what you say is true too, as well, though. As an adult, and someone comes at you with a lot of negativity, a lot of us like to say, I could care less about that. But on some level, you do care. Totally. But when you're an adult and you're centered, you don't let it affect you to the point where you do something stupid, but it still bothers you.
Yeah, totally. Because it sucks. Why would someone say or do that?
Right. Like, this person doesn't even know me, and they're saying,
And the fact that
we're all still human,
Yeah, the fact they think they have the ability, freedom, or whatever to do that to another human being is just beyond me.
Right.
But that's what people do. But it's real. It's palatable. And when you're a child and you're a young mind, it exists. And whatever your mind sees, thinks, feels, whatever you visualize and put in your mind is reality.
Yeah.
So they're being bullied, and it's reality.
Yeah.
It is, and it's got to be changed. And the only way to change it is to say, don't do that.
Right.
Here's what you do instead.
I think that one of the real negatives of the internet is it's allowed the inner coward to develop fully, right?
Coward, that's great.
No, I mean, you look at YouTube, and let's say like there's a Beyonce video, and you look at some of the comments, and of course these are anonymous people, and they're dropping the N-word left and right, and all this racist vitriol. And these are people that you probably see in everyday life all the time who would never verbalize that stuff in the real world. But this is who they really are, because they're in this really comfortable environment where they're anonymous, and now they can say what they really think.
I can say the presidential race right now is really magnified that attitude now. It's like people are saying things like, wow, really? Yeah. Did you just say that?
Larry King calls it electile dysfunction.
Exactly.
Like our current race right now. Yeah.
It's terrible. And you can see the decline in communication and compassion in our electoral race and what social media has done to people's, mindset. It's okay to do that stuff. It's okay to talk about people and call them names and belittle them.
It's even encouraged, right? Because you look at reality TV shows, like really negative behavior is encouraged. Otherwise, it's considered boring.
Right. And that's why I don't watch it, because it's like, to me, it's a waste of time, and it's a waste of human spirituality, because we are a heck of a lot better than that. And there's other things we could be doing than picking on each other and making fun of each other.
Yeah. No, it's about as productive as putting your head in the microwave for 10 minutes. Yeah. That's what reality TV does to your brain. You can just feel like brain cells dying with each minute you're watching, It's like, man, I'm getting dumber as the minutes go along here. I can just feel it happening, But the problem is because it's so now this is a separate discussion from bullying, but now people see a pathway to stardom as just being a reality TV person, just being an Instagram. I'm an Instagram model.
Yeah, it's not a pathway away from bullying, because a lot of that is built on bullying. I mean, a lot of these reality stars bully someone on the show, so bully's at the heart of even that stuff. Just like
those
somebody's going to call somebody out, slap them.
Those are the most popular characters on those shows.
Exactly. Usually. Screaming at everyone, throwing drinks in people's faces, threatening people. So it's not too far.
Even on the UFC reality shows, right? I rarely ever watch the TUF shows, just because I just find all this. I just find all the banter between people just irritating, boring. But anyway, I was watching a few clips of the current one now with Joanna.
Oh, Joanna!
Who I like, but her behavior.
But I'm getting to the point where I'm not liking her very much.
Yeah, absolutely. Her
She's becoming the new Rhonda
show,
as far as this show is concerned. It's
absolutely.
Like I ended up loving Misha by the end of that season, and now I'm loving Claudia now. I'm just like I want Claudia to take the belt now, dude.
Yeah, it's too much, and obviously part of it is someone's following you around with a camera, so that's going to
edge you on. The producer's like, hey,
absolutely,
get the face.
And it's being edited in a certain way too.
Yeah. And the producer has a notepad, and he's going over and going, "Hey, do you know what so and so just said about you?"
Exactly.
Talk about that. Listen, let's talk about that right now.
When you were on Gym Rescue, was that I saw a few episodes of it, but was that kind of behavior encouraged in any way, or did someone come to you and say, "Oh, this gym owner just said this about you, about the advice you just gave him"?
No, because it's a different model.
Right.
There we're looking for those moments, which are the aha moment,
right.
the breakdown moment, the teamwork moment. So for us, it's really about accomplishing the moment. And it's not as much as instigated as some of these other, lifestyle type shows.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, you got to get the scene. So whatever it needs to get the scene, you do. It just depends on what your morals are, what your moral makeup is. Yeah.
Right.
But,
it seems like a reality TV show, when they try to do something positive, it doesn't last, right? They don't make it out of the first season.
Well, negativity sells, man, because it makes the viewer feel better about their crappy life that's going on. It's like, well, at least I'm not that guy.
Well, also some people like to see people fail because it makes them feel better about their own failures.
Exactly.
Like, well, at least I'm not alone in my failing. I feel better now.
Yeah, the human being is very strange in that way.
Yes.
Yeah.
We either like to participate in the success or we encourage and celebrate the failures. And then we also have this really interesting thing, which I find fascinating, is that we love to build people up and then tear them down.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
And we can't wait to do it. Like, we're just so excited. Oh, he's almost there. And then the moment comes, everyone's like, I knew it. I knew it.
Forget that guy.
no matter who it is, like when Fedor got tapped out by Verdum, everyone's like, see, I knew he wasn't that good. I was like,
his time's up. Yeah. See, he was overrated. It's like, really?
Same thing with Ronda. She gets knocked out. It's like, I knew she wasn't that great. It's like, come on.
Of course, it's still the fat guy at the bar with the beer in his hand.
Yeah. Exactly.
You're like, really?
No, that's right. I mean, people kind of admire the success going up, and then there's a larger population that loves seeing that crash. They want to be right there when they see that person crash and burn. Like the whole O.J. Simpson case, right, when we were all growing up. I mean, that was 24-hour news cycle. People couldn't get enough of that.
Yeah.
People now don't realize what a huge star he was then.
Oh, yeah.
And that's why it was such a big deal. But there was a segment of the population that was just fascinated by the fact that he was in this situation.
Yeah, I was.
Yeah,
I was too.
Very intriguing. Pretty awesome.
Yes, it was interesting. Still is. Here it is 24 years later, and we're still like,
we're still watching it going,
exactly. Like the people versus O.J. Simpson, like, man, couldn't wait to watch every episode. It's like, because you're reliving this part. You are part of that history, some way, somehow. Somehow you had some type of
Well, I always equate it to, like, look, if you saw a plane crashing, you're going to feel bad about the people on the plane, but it's going to be hard not to look as that plane is crashing because
all of a sudden your inner expert comes in like, well, how did it do that? Like, and what angle did it hit? All these different things, man. You start just every time you just watch it more, you find more reasons to keep watching it over and over and over to justify why you keep looking at it.
Yeah, well, that's what I used to say about fighting back when it was illegal and no one really wanted it to happen. And they'd be like, but no one's going to watch it. And I was like, sir, I think you're wrong there. Listen, if a fist fight breaks out, people are going to stop. Like, it's just human nature. You can't help yourself. You want to know what's going on. And the conflict is so personal. When it's one-on-one and there's, it instantly piques your humanness.
Yeah.
You want to know what's going on. And you want to see the result and you want to get invested somehow.
Exactly. No matter how peaceful you are, that violent part of you is still in you. It's that yin and yang. So no matter who you are, you still have that interest in that, because also at the end of the day, on a good note, looking at that violence, you can appreciate the peace that you can find in your life. If hopefully that's the one thing you can really get out of it, but it's in you. It's not, no one's like 100% Zen all the freaking time. That switch is there. It's all about what can turn that switch on.
Right.
That's the one thing people need to just, admit. But nobody wants to admit that. That's why people watch the news. They see all this violence going on.
Yes.
There's a part of them that, they may not be violent people personally, but there's a part of them like, wow. People get very invested in what's going on in wars because there's a secret part, especially so many men like, I kind of wish I had joined the military so I could participate in that. But then again, I don't want to get shot and die. So I'm good. I'm going to watch this on the news. It's always that conflict, man.
Yeah, it's kind of like that visceral living experience.
Yeah.
That's one of the things why MMA is so popular. It's not a big surprise to me that it's so popular. I remember when I saw the first UFC, I was like, wow, this is fascinating. This is like Bloodsport for real. And Bloodsport was one of my favorite movies growing up. I was like, you would, I mean, when you're a teenager watching Bloodsport, you think that's what it would actually be like. You're like, yeah, this looks really realistic. And then you see a UFC and you're like, oh wow, this is amazing.
This is happening.
Yeah, this is just incredible. All these different, because that was always a question among people at that time, is like which style would prevail.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, it changed the entire face of martial arts in this country.
Oh, no doubt.
And then around the world. And I was a young, like, super nerd there with it, teaching it and living it. And I taught people who looked at me and were like, Mr. Shamrock, I have been teaching this wrong for 20 years. And I'd be like, no, sir, you're not. This is just new information.
Right.
They were like, what do I do? I'm like, no, you keep teaching. This is just new information and on the study. But, completely taken aback. The entire country was not ready for this.
I think when you have such high-level combat sports going on, you're going to learn what works and doesn't work really fast.
Yeah. And that's what we didn't have. We didn't have a testing ground like Japan and Brazil, and it wasn't real. It was imagined here and in movies and in dojos, but it hadn't been realized until that moment.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, before that, growing up, we would think that a fight would look like a Van Damme movie where he's throwing flying kicks and never goes to the ground. Yeah, exactly. Like 10 guys with pipes are coming after you and you just kick one at a time.
Another guy and they never go down. No matter how hard you get hit, you never go down. You're just like, I'm cool. Oh, man.
Well, cool, man. We don't want to hold you up all day. But it's been a pleasure talking to you, man. It's great catching up. And I love what you're doing with Shamrock Way. How can people support you in this endeavor? Is there a donation page?
Sure. You can go to shamrockway.org, and there's a donation page, a volunteer page. There's a bunch of information about our projects, our causes, and our corporation.
Is fundraising the most important thing right now, just galvanizing all the funds to put all this into action? Yeah,
I mean, we're walking the line of fundraising and sharing our story with the public.
Right.
Because I think most important, this is a story that I think needs to be shared and understood. And to me, it's like launching a product.
Yeah,
you
absolutely.
Take the time, you tell the story, you brand it right, then you monetize, the results. And I think I'm taking all my business acumen and everything I've learned, and all my Silicon Valley friends are on the board.
That's
and
great.
I'm approaching it like a real business. But I want to I want to raise a bunch of money and help a bunch of people build a bunch of ranches. And I think this could be something that could be very valuable to our entire country.
Right. So this is a model that could be duplicated anywhere in the country and even around the world.
Yeah, this is a scalable model that we want to sell and, build. And if you want it, we'll come put one up. And, to me, these are things that change the community. We made a tremendous impact on the community we lived in, Susanville, California. And we can do that to any community.
Yeah. Now you're looking to also document this in some way where it becomes possibly some kind of TV show or maybe even an online series?
Yeah, for sure. We've got a ton of offers for the show once it's built. So I think we're going to build it and then just be in that position to decide what type of show we want. But speaking of the show, to me, it's going to be a show about good news. It's going to be about kids on the edge that we save, and watch them go through the system and watch them, go through the learning and, the realizations and, go on the hike and have that, mind-body connection and, cry a few tears and, make some decisions and grow up and be men. And I think that's compelling television, especially when you see them achieve their goals and when you see the family and the community come out to support that.
Right. And we need more good news.
Yeah.
I like the idea of a show about good news that's going to inspire people to participate in some way.
Yeah, and there'll be ups and downs, but, and our company's all volunteer. So if you do want to volunteer or get involved in a charitable cause, we'd love to have you. We need anyone and every skill set at this point, from top to bottom. So trust me, if you have an intention, a passion, and a desire, we can use you.
Oh, that's great.
That's awesome, man.
I'll definitely be following up with you about that. That sounds fantastic. Well, hey, man, thanks a lot. We will get this episode together and send you a link later on this week, and then just really proliferate it, get it out there, and get as much awareness and fundraising as possible for all the great stuff you're doing.
That'd be awesome, guys. I sure appreciate it.
Thank you very much, man. Great talking to you.
All right, have a good one.
All right, you have a good one, too. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Here. And again, that was Frank Shamrock. That was a really fun discussion. It's great catching up with him, and I love all the positive things he's doing.
Yeah.
So I think Shamrock Way, go check that out. What's funny is sometimes we have episodes where we talk about nutrition and stuff like that, and people are going to be like, "Oh, there were a lot of factual mistakes there and all that," and that's all fine. It's okay to have all these great discussions on nutrition. Let's have some discussions on some real stuff, though.
Right.
Like how do we raise more awareness for Warrior Angels or Shamrock Way? Those are the kind of discussions we should really have, rather than pedantic discussions about what nutrition plan is the best.
Exactly. Which way to deadlift is going to be the best. I'm like, there's only so few, okay, at this point. Anything else, you start making up stuff.
Right.
So how many ways can we say the same thing in different ways?
Well, it's like what we said about the Christian Thibodeau episode. Like, oh, man, I hope you guys get him back again. It's like, you know what? We're going to wait a while because you need at least a good year to apply what he said in the last episode.
Like, I'm waiting for your report on, applying some of the things he mentioned at first. And then we can move forward. But, things like this, like, with shamrockway.org and Warrior Angels, those are things you can do right now. And you can say, hey, man, I just want to let you guys know that, hey, man, I donated, or I'm putting together a fundraiser for those guys right now. See, that's immediate. That can happen right now. You don't have to wait 6 to 8 weeks, 6 to 12 weeks, or a 6-month cycle, and you're making a huge impact that goes beyond just yourself.
So. Well, actually, on that topic, one of our listeners, and I forget his name right now, but he was inspired by the Warrior Angels episode to the point where I put him in contact with Andrew, and he's going to do a fundraiser at his gym and donate the proceeds to Warrior Angels.
That's awesome, man.
So that's just an example of what we're talking about is you can donate money yourself, and then you can galvanize other people to have a group donation. And everything helps. Sometimes people feel, well, $10 is not going to help. It's like, look, if 10% of our population donated $10 to that organization, every single person, every single soldier with PTSD, probably every single person, period, with that would be able to get the help they need.
Exactly, man.
So it's individual contributions do make a difference because the more individuals that contribute, the larger the contributions.
Yeah, funny how that works.
What you don't want to do is just have the mentality of, oh, I wish someone would do something about that, or I don't need to do anything because someone else will do something.
Exactly.
Those are the two things that really impede any kind of progress in our society.
Hey, man, step up, be the one. So you can say, hey, I did my part. What's up with you? So it feels so much better when you say that.
Right.
Than being the one like, oh, man, I wish I could be like you, dude. I wish I could have done something. Could have. Are you dead? I'm like, you still have time.
I think one of the reoccurring themes that you're going to hear a lot on our show is people like Andrew, people like Frank, people that are doing a lot of good for others. They're taking the success they've had, or they're taking personal problems and turning that into some kind of triumph to help others. Those kind of things I like. I like talking to people like that. It's exciting.
And guess what? All of you guys out there listening, you don't have to be on the scale of Frank and, or been through all the things that Andrew's been through as well to make that difference, man. Don't count yourself out, dude. And dudettes. Don't count yourself out. You can still make a huge impact.
Well, everyone's been through something.
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean,
no one's got the perfect life in this world.
And we could say comparatively to someone who's going through suffering in the Congo or Rwanda, our problems are a joke, but there's still problems. Yeah. So, even the abuse Frank went through is bad. Is it as bad as some woman who's been raped 100 times in the Congo? No, but that doesn't mean that he hasn't had problems, right? So it's all contextual.
Yeah, it's not a contest like who's got the most problems. It's like it's more like who can find the most solutions and apply them. That's what we should be thinking. Flipping that over.
Exactly. It's like keep doing with the hardships through. That's really the question that matters.
Exactly.
Well, cool, man. We're going to go ahead and wrap up there. I didn't get a chance to do my list of shout outs, so we're just going to have to do that next time. And guess what? You don't need your name shouted out. It's like, are you really buying the products and listening to the show so you hear your name on the show? Of course not. So you don't need to have your name shouted out.
Care less about that. You just want to make sure the product works, right? I thought so. And we know it does, all right? So, yeah, there we go.
Use that coupon code LLA. Go get 10% off the best nutrition supplements money can buy at MikeMahler.com. And how about with you, man?
Same thing at NewWarriorTraining.com. And use that same coupon code, LLA. Also, head over to Patreon.com/LLA Podcast. Become a monthly supporter of the show. And last but not least, head to Stitcher, iTunes, TuneIn, all the places that you listen to the show. And go over there, rate us, review us, share the episode, let the world know what's going on, and help us to promote great organizations like Frank's, as well as Andrew's, and the many other guests that we've had on the show in the past. Oh, man, because we're creeping up on, I believe, this week will be 3 years for us, man.
Yeah, man.
Next week, I believe, is going to be 3 years, as a matter of fact. So, and we're almost at 1 million downloads, too. So,
yeah, that's awesome.
Things are growing. So, cool, people. So, that's going to wrap it up for this week, and we'll catch you all on the next show.
All right. Take care, everyone.